All right, just go for it. Great. My name is Dan Champoux, Chief Engineer, founder of GEKOT Incorporated. My background is in automotive engineering, controls engineering, powertrain development, engine calibration, engine diagnostics. If you've got an engine light ever came on in your Jeep, I probably had something to do with that. But I want to talk to you today about a little scenario I came across a few years ago. So micromobility refers to the use of light electric vehicles like electric bikes or electric scooters. And usually they're used in a rental type application to drive short distances. So in Detroit, downtown, we've got 6 or so providers of these electric scooters, right? They're colorful. They're on every street corner. They got names like Bird and Line Spin, and you use an application on your phone to unlock them. So for a couple of bucks, you can ride around and whatnot. Super convenient. These vehicles are designed to reduce traffic, reduce parking concerns, and the idea is when you replace a car trip with a small vehicle trip, you reduce some dependence on oil, right? So this is all about save the car trip, save the planet kind of thing. Pretty cool. But the usage has been growing like crazy, especially when the pandemic hit. A lot of people couldn't take public transportation, so they started renting vehicles and whatnot. So this is definitely an industry that's growing like crazy. So I'm curious, by a show of hands, who's ridden one of these crazy scooters, rented a scooter? Cool. So I'm going to flip the script on the audience engagement gimmick, and I want to have never done so. Briefly give you a shout out why you've avoided renting a scooter or whatnot.
Not very balanced. I would fall frequently.
Prefer walking.
Prefer walking. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. So the balance, that's a big thing. A lot of people get concerned about that. And usually what the question then comes is, gosh, I've heard they're pretty dangerous, or I'm afraid of falling and whatnot. Yeah, for sure. That's pretty typical. The truth is there are a lot of accidents and injuries associated with these vehicles, either for the rider or for the pedestrian who gets hit. Sometimes they're parked improperly, laying on the side of the sidewalk. People trip over them. They got a little bit of a negative reputation, which is problematic, both for riders who are saying, yeah, you know what, I'm going to pass on this. Also for city managers who are saying, yeah, you know what, maybe we don't want these in our cities. And so the Birds and Limes and Spins of the world end up out of market opportunities, and more importantly, we're missing out on opportunities again to reduce some of the traffic concerns and dependence on oil. So I took a look at this and said, the automotive industry has solved some of these problems by collision problems with collision avoidance systems. So imagine, you have the backup camera in your car. You're backing out the driveway, and you're about to hit the garbage can, and all of a sudden the backup camera beeps and blinks at you, right? And maybe even hits the brakes for you. Most modern vehicles have this feature. So that's an example of a collision avoidance system. So these systems typically use very expensive LiDAR-based systems. That's a laser rangefinder, but there are very inexpensive laser rangefinders available recently because of things like the drone industry and whatnot. So my thought was, well, could we put a collision avoidance system on a scooter? So I mocked up a little demonstration unit using a LiDAR, small LiDAR sensor, and a Arduino controller, and some bells and whistles, lights and sound and whatnot, and made a little collision avoidance system for a scooter. So that's what we got going on here. Let me see if I can give a little demo here. So here's a little demo of this vehicle. Kind of cool. So this is the same vehicle here. This is our first demo unit. Now we've since alpha and beta. Now we're actually doing a pilot launch. But this is the very first vehicle that started it all. So yeah, the idea is as we're approaching a hazard, we get a series of beeps and blinks that progress as we get closer, right? So if I'm going to run over Al, I'll get some warning, right? The newer versions not only alert the rider, but they have lights and sounds on the front that ideally would alert Al or whatever pedestrians that, hey, you're about to get run over, that kind of stuff. So that was the concept. So okay, what do I do with this concept? So I talked to Razor. So this is a Razor scooter. Razor, this is the same Razor that makes your kids' kick scooter. They also make electric scooters. In fact, they make lots of electric ride-ons. They make more electric vehicles than anyone else on the planet. So I contacted Razor out in California and showed them what I've been working on. And they were very curious. They said, yeah, come on down. We'd love to see it. So I packed up my toy here and flew out to California, between Long Beach and Anaheim. And I met the leadership team of Razor, including the CEO. And they got to ride my scooters around in the warehouse and outside. And like, hey, I think you're really onto something. They're pretty excited. And said, you know, we want to help you out and see if we can develop this further. They were a little concerned that the LiDAR sensor had a limited range. I said, yeah, you know, I went for cheap. And they said, you know, I think we need a little more range, probably 20 meters or so. I said, I can do that. The LiDAR sensor now is about, you know, $80 instead of $40. And they said, you know, we'd like you to explore that. You know, we'll pay for your development efforts and see what you can do. And then they said the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. They said, by the way, Dan, our industry has lots of other problems. People riding on sidewalks when there's bike lanes available, people stealing scooters, people using them, people parking them improperly, they can't see them at night and whatnot, batteries being stolen. So does the automotive industry have any solutions for these as well? And I said, well, some of them probably, but that's, as I talked to these guys, I learned that this micromobility industry, it's not like the automotive industry. Here, you can't throw a rock without hitting an automotive engineer in Detroit, right? But the micromobility industries, and we really appreciate it. You stop throwing rocks at us. That's really getting all right. But the micromobility is they really just buy these vehicles from China and they put them on the street, and they don't have a lot of say in the engineering. Razor is actually unique in that they actually own their vertical infrastructure. They have their own plants in China, but they still struggle with being able to be innovative and whatnot. So I said, okay, well, I can take on this role, but I'm gonna need a little bit of help. So it's funny because this is actually when I had met Q, and he talked to me about the business accelerator at Oakland University, which is where I got my engineering degree. And he said they might be able to help you out, and he was absolutely right. So I connected with the engineering school at Oakland University, and they were nice enough to give me this giant lab here, or let me borrow some of the lab space, as well as 50 to 54 odd students for a course of 3 semesters. We worked with students on all these different problems that Razor had identified and more. And basically, Razor gave us like 20 scooters. They funded the school. It was $8,000 or so per semester. Razor funded that, as well as came in to check out our progress. This Jeff here, he's the head of the micromobility division for Razor. Cody is the head of operations. So Razor is divided into 2 divisions. There's the retail side, which everyone knows about when you go into a Walmart or a Target and you see all the colorful scooters there. That's the retail side. They sell hundreds of thousands of scooters. But Razor is also in this micromobility industry, this rental scooter type scenario. They're not in Michigan. They're mostly on the West Coast in the southern states, so you won't see them here unless you go to Oakland University. But yeah, so basically the head of that division came out to see what we're doing, and they were pretty excited. They actually took one of our solutions that they wanted to bring to market. We made an electronic lock, basically, that you use to tether the scooter to a bike rack, something that Razor said would help with parking compliance. And Razor was so excited about that, we connected them with a manufacturing partner in Flint, and they ended up purchasing a bunch of these units. If you rent the scooter out in Sacramento, California right now, you'll see one of our solutions actually in the real world. Pretty cool. But certainly this collision system and some of the other tech solutions we're most excited about. So yeah, we basically developed this whole suite of solutions to address many of the problems that Razor had mentioned that are a challenge. Things like detecting abuse, detecting people stealing batteries. That's a really big problem. Who would have known? And whatnot. So it turns out that this was more than just a bunch of little technical problems that Razor has, obviously, and it's industry-wide. All of the birds and limes and spins in the world are having the same problem. But there's a secondary problem on top of that, and that's this perception problem. Again, when I talk to people about scooters, everybody's got a story about somebody who got hurt or somebody who's like, I've heard they're dangerous, I'm not going to go on them. And so there's this negative perception, and it's not unwarranted for sure, but this whole negative perception is kind of a burden in general. So they're looking for technical solutions to really make the vehicles more accepting to the end users, the riders, to the city managers that are allowing the vehicles in the facilities, to universities that have them on campuses and whatnot. So that's the real win, is if we can make the scooters safer, then there'll be a greater acceptance, and there'll be the ability to penetrate some of these hard to reach markets. Pretty cool. So there's a whole suite of solutions in here. I'll just briefly go through some of them. So scooters don't have rear mirrors, and it's really unnerving when you're tooling around and all of a sudden somebody blows past you. You can't hear because the wind's in your ears. So basically we developed a blind spot detection to tell when a vehicle is going to overtake you. We have a fall detection system that detects if a fall or an accident occurs, and it'll send a push notification up to the fleet manager to call for assistance. And more importantly, we're actually tracking information. A lot of falls and accidents go unreported. So this is data that we think can be useful to both the OEMs making these vehicles as well as city managers trying to make decisions. So people leave their vehicles, either they'll throw them down when they're done. Sometimes it's accidental, the wind will just blow them over. Nonetheless, that becomes a tripping hazard for people coming along the sidewalks. So the idea here is just we want to illuminate the tripping hazard, and again, send a push notification to the fleet manager saying, hey, come service your vehicle. We have several theft and tamper solutions. We know the Razor has reported that we've officially thwarted our first theft, which is pretty cool. They actually had a picture of the scooter that someone had pried up in the deck and didn't manage to steal the battery, which is pretty cool. The battery's like $125. And apparently what you do with that is you take that back to your homeless camp and you cut open the lithium batteries, you start a chemical fire, and you cook your meth on that. So a little experiment for you to try.
I didn't even know that.
That's what Razor's learning. That's another finding. Yeah. Usage rules. When there's sidewalks, when there's bike lanes available, we don't want people riding on sidewalks. There's a lot of money being thrown at solutions to detect sidewalks. In fact, our really only serious competitor uses a camera-based system with some machine learning to detect the environment if the person's riding on a sidewalk or not. And Razor, it's kind of funny, when I first talked to them, they'd actually already partnered with this company, and they told us that, yeah, their system's way too expensive, and it doesn't work that way. And oh, by the way, when we piloted 9 vehicles, all 9 of them had their cameras vandalized. Okay, message received. People don't like cameras, taking pictures of them. So they were real excited about our solution because it only used accelerometers to detect sidewalks, and it was very inexpensive. So pretty excited about that. And then lots of lighting cues, lights that automatically come on when appropriate, turn signals, things like that. Brake lights, high-mounted brake lights, lots of little things like that that could be retrofitted onto an existing scooter or built into your next version. We made an electronic lock, I mentioned, that tethers the scooter to a bike rack when not in use and whatnot. So that's pretty cool. Market potential, yeah, there's over 100 companies doing this scooter rental issue, which is actually kind of too many. They're actually starting, I think there's like 6 operators in Detroit alone. And little by little, the big fish are eating up the little fish. There's just too many. And actually, that's, Razor is even struggling with that. We make a ton of money on retail, and we got this little micro modular division. We're competing with all these other companies, but they're all competing for the same resources. The same municipalities are, they've got 100 people coming in for their RFQs saying we'd like to put our scooters there. And now the cities are starting to push back, and they're asking questions like, "Prove to me your scooter is safer than others. Do you have technologies to detect sidewalks?" That kind of thing. And very few companies are out there offering these solutions. And as far as I know, we're the only company offering a comprehensive system that addresses a lot of these problems all in one handsome little package. which it turns out was actually the hardest thing. It was easy enough to do one thing, like a little collision avoidance system like this. It wasn't terribly difficult. But when you're trying to do multiple things at once, it gets real challenging real quick. That's where we need some engineering. So the value proposition. The riders are ideally they would get more assurance if they believe that their scooter is safer, that it has extra eyes, that it's going to be watching out for them. The cities will benefit, in theory, from fewer injuries, fewer complaints, fewer vehicles that are being left on sidewalks and whatnot. And data. There's a lot of this industry is really struggling with data. What do we do with this information? Do we have enough information to really even understand the number of accidents and injuries that are happening? Turns out that I did set out to collect data, and yet that was just kind of a byproduct. And I've got all this accident data that I don't know what to do with. And so that's one of the challenges we have is what do we even do with some of these other solutions that we found along the way. And of course, the rental companies, the Birds and Limes and Razors of the world, they're really hoping to benefit from fewer accidents, increased customer acceptance, and maybe even being able to get a discount on their insurances. They carry huge umbrella insurance policies, and there's really no way of the insurance companies to know who's safer and who's not. And so we're hoping that we can offer a solution in that regard. So that's kind of what's going on. Pretty crazy. Next steps are we just got a grant from the Office of Future Mobility, Michigan's part of MEDC. We got a $90,000 grant to do a real-world deployment. And so I've partnered again with Edge Labs in Flint, Michigan. They're going to build out a pilot-level hardware, which you're going to be deploying actually in Arkansas, of all places, on Walmart's campus. We were struggling to find a place in Michigan, but we think we found a home down there. So right now we're integrating technology into existing scooters, but I'm very excited that we're actually going to be putting our technology also into a brand new scooter purpose-built vehicle for that market. So we're working on that right now. That's kind of the most exciting thing going on. So full disclosure, I've got to be a little transparent here and confess that the idea of a collision avoidance system for a scooter was not my idea. So I'd like you to meet the inventors. This is a group of 4th and 5th grade students from East Hills Middle School in Bloomfield. These are the great engineering kids of Tomorrow Robotics Team, or GEKOT. I serve as a mentor and coach for First Robotics. I've done so for 8 years. I'm involved in a lot of youth programs, but by far playing with these crazy kids is one of my favorite things to do. And besides building robots and competing with robots, in First Robotics, the teams are also challenged with identifying a real-world problem and proposing a solution to that real-world problem. And usually that takes the form of the students identify something interesting and they come up with a little model. They might have a little, almost a science fair type presentation, and they'll get a high five and a trophy if they do well. Sometimes you get a patent and a connection with a strategic partner like Razor. That was completely unexpected. Yeah, the students actually came down to Detroit to explore different problems in the city, and they talked to different leaders down here and learned about different problems in the city. And then they saw the scooters around here. Like, well, what's up with these scooters? This was a few years ago. Scooters were kind of a new thing here. And we learned that there was a lot of accidents and injuries. And the students said, gosh, maybe that's a problem we can address. So I connected them with Chrysler engineers who taught them about collision avoidance systems and other safety measures, and they kind of latched onto that and said, can we do a collision avoidance system for a scooter? Sure. So we used their little Lego controller and mocked up a system on using an ultrasonic sensor on my son's old kick scooter, and wrote some really basic code. And yeah, they had a collision avoidance system on their hand, which they took to the competition, won first place, and then talked to Razor and showed them what we had done. And Razor said, we're going to send you 2 electric scooters. We want you to make a real one. And they did so. Took that to the state competition, won first place. And it's just been exploded ever since then. So yeah, the kids are named on a patent application that's still in process. They're over the moon about everything. They've become a little mini celebrities in their school, and Coach Dan has kind of taken their idea to the next level. So they're pretty excited about that. So yeah, that's my crazy story. Do you have a question, sir?
Thank you, Dan. So, Q&A, the small group we have here.
Sure, that's okay.
I do have a question. So when you were talking about all the detection, this and that, oh, you want to do this? Want to do that? Andy, did you get me in there?
So I've gone to a lot of these. I purposely got to do it. I've gone to a lot of these things, but I'm usually the guy sitting in the chair going, "Wow, I wish that was me someday." It's my someday. So yeah.
So when do you draw the line between robotic attentiveness versus human attentiveness? So you know how people just assume, like, when you're driving down the street, you have a timed traffic light. So they assume that it's going to be safe to either time it so they can go faster, versus you paying attention to everyone else.
Yeah.
You have all these detections, so I'm just going to assume that whatever is next to me is going to detect it. I don't have to turn and look. Where do you draw that line?
No, I know exactly what you're referring to. In the automotive industry, we've often joked that, if you really want people to slow down, instead of putting an airbag in the center of the steering wheel, put a big old spike there. People will pay attention, right?
Dramatic,
Right? And this, you were seeing this with the Teslas of the world and the other autonomous vehicles for sure.
Yeah.
This is a challenge. This is why we're kind of skipping level 4 autonomy, and it's like, okay, we have to get to level 5. Level 4 will never work because people will never pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
So this is no problem. And that's not. We don't dismiss that even on a simple application like this as well. This solution, it doesn't take control of the vehicle. All it does is alert the driver, or the rider, and nearby pedestrians to take action. So the onus is still on the human being to take control. But that said, I know that there have been experiments with autonomous scooters, and who knows what's going to come next.
So it's just a beeping noise that tells the user.
Right. So
and
in
there's
this,
something next to it.
yeah, in this demo model, this is a pretty basic one. The more advanced ones have these bright rider alert lights up top that kind of shoot upwards, which are really only helpful at night. During the day, you wouldn't be able to see these anyways. But then, and then there's also lights that project forward to anybody that might be in the vehicle's path to kind of alert them as well.
Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of separate questions. First, can you give the link to the patent pending document for the patent?
I can absolutely do that. I could pull it up today, but yeah, we've
Okay.
patented several of the features right now. I just talked to our patent attorney. So this is another fun thing when you work with students and you go to a patent office and you say, hey, would you help us with these my cute students with this project? Like, oh, we'll do that pro bono. So shout out to my friends at Harness IP. Thank you very much. We've leveraged about $50,000 worth of free services from them, and they've just been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. Yeah.
Do the kids have their names?
The kids' names are on the patent.
Unreal.
I know.
That's actually how we met. Can I tell them the story?
Yeah, sure.
The story goes, pre-pandemic, I work for AccelerateKID, so I work with kids to move them forward in technology and entrepreneurship. So that's like K to 12. So Dan and I met at a media event, Metro Parents, and he was in the gymnasium. I was outside around the gymnasium passing out flyers, and he comes out and he looks at me. He's like, "Oh, AccelerateKID, what do you do?" So I told him what we did. So he asked me about patents, and I said to him about Open University having that program, and I was talking to him. I was like, "Oh my God!" He told me what the kids do. I was like, "This is amazing! This is amazing!" Like, one thing about kids, I've been doing this for a while. Kids don't have boundaries.
Right.
They'll come up with things you're like, "Oh my God!" I've been indoctrinated. I've been educated in the institutional sense, so I cannot think outside of that. But the kids who come up with these ideas, like, this is like an obvious thing, but it's so obvious that I didn't think about it. So that's how we met. And the pandemic happened, and when I was looking at the DNewTech, I get all these like new members pings, and his name come out. I was like, wait a second, do you know this guy? So I go, do I know you? Yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah.
But yeah, about patent and stuff, it's amazing. There's the Detroit patent office on the street here. They help kids now too. It's a big thing to help kids get their information or idea patent.
Yeah, we did a field trip to that office.
Oh, you did?
But what I quickly learned is there's no resources specifically for young inventors, and that's what I was asking you about at the time. And there still isn't to this day. But we found some inroads. We found patent attorneys that are willing to help and get connected with different organizations.
Yeah.
For sure.
Question. I was wondering if you've like experimented with like automatic braking or something like that.
Sure. So that's a common question we get. Well, does the vehicle slow down? So, and that's something we certainly could do. And when I talked when I started talking to these industry experts, I've done a lot of learning. And a scooter's not a car, right? When you have a dangerous situation with a vehicle, your instinct to slam on that brake pedal, right? A scooter is much more likely to steer away from a bad situation than to brake from a situation. When you hit the brakes too hard, you could be throwing yourself. And especially if it's like a side impact, like a car's coming at you, you do not want to slow down. You want to be able to steer and get away. So we don't slow down the vehicle for those situations. Now there are some situations, like if you're reckless riding, if you're power sliding, we can beep and slow down the vehicle and say, hey, you need to chill. Yeah, but yeah, so the controller has features, at least Razer has features in their controller to manage speed, and we have access to those features, and so we can actually send those commands and say, limit the speed or cut it completely.
Like icy or something?
What's that?
Like if it was icy?
They don't.
They do it geographically.
Correct.
On a river, it slows down automatically.
Well, they do the whole geofence, right? When you run one of these scooters and you go out too far, it automatically hit the brakes and the little speaker will say, you need to turn around, right? Or you're right, a lot of times with geofencing away from waters, people love to throw these things in the rivers.
Or like public spaces. If you're in like a crowded space that's like regularly crowded, it'll slow down automatically.
Correct.
I have a question. So in terms of, you mentioned competition, you mentioned working with Razer, so like you have patents pending, so obviously there's intellectual property involved. From a defensibility standpoint, as a business, how are you thinking about that? Like obviously you approach Razer, so my question was going to be, before you mentioned that, like what stops Razer from doing it themselves?
Right. So we got a first right of refusal agreement with Razer on the patent app, and they actually helped us. They helped us do the provisional patent application. They funded that, and then we turned it over to our attorney to do the non-provisional. But when we first started with this, we thought, oh, maybe it's a patent play, and we knew nothing about patents at the time. And it turns out that Razer loves to play with patents. They love to collect patents and deal with patents. So we were pretty excited that they wanted to sign this agreement. It basically says that they'd be interested in purchasing a patent or a royalty or some sort of agreement to the patent if it comes to fruition, for sure. Yeah, but you have other part of your question. You're right. It's no point in getting a patent if you can't defend it. If you don't have the ability to defend it. So we also filed in China, for example, and we fully expect that whatever happens in China will happen in China. We don't have a whole lot of control over that. This could be a very short-lived invention. We get that, but I don't expect to have the abilities to defend a patent on my own. But with something like Razer, who knows? So it's good to have friends.
So just to press it, but like just again, like trying to, it's one of like feedback, so that if Razer buys the patent, as opposed to, for example, licensing the patent, would you then be like absorbed within Razer? Is that the goal of the business? So
there's several different business models. Patent play is only one of. You're right. The patent could be purchased outright, in which case we just walk away and we're done. Right? There could be a licensing agreement, which would be great because we could license to Razer and to Bird and to Lime and to Spin. So you're absolutely correct. One of the business models is just what can we do with the patent.
Oh yes. Okay. So I noticed like a lot of people, like couples, riding scooters, and then I saw somewhere that it's supposed to be like a single-person vehicle. So you have any data about that?
So that was one of the problems that Razer mentioned to us. is two-person riding. You see this a lot, especially if someone will put a smaller kid in front of them while they're riding. And we actually did work with the Oakland University students and worked on a solution where we put pressure sensors in the deck, and we were actually able to detect if there's one or two people. And it worked pretty well. And when Razor came and visited, they saw this and they said, gosh, it does work well, but it adds quite a bit of complexity. And truthfully, that problem isn't as big as the other problems. And so it's a solution, but it's not something that they would necessarily pursue. So you're right. There's lots of other problems in this industry, but there's bigger problems, if you will.
I guess another smaller problem, helmet detection.
There are some industry partners where there's the scooter actually has a helmet, essentially locked to the vehicle, and when you use your phone to unlock it, it unlocks the helmet, and you're kind of required to do it. Certainly, all of the companies, the Razors, the Birds, and Lines, they all give away helmets. They have free demo days where they, when you on the app, it gives you the instructions. It says wear a helmet, but like 95% of people don't wear helmets. But the thing is that helmets are great after you've had an accident. But our whole focus is, can we prevent an accident from happening in the first place?
With the pilot you're running, or are you going to be testing if it actually reduces accident?
Correct. So that's the real challenge. So I've got a data scientist on board who's that's her job, is to figure out both from a rider perspective and from a public perception, are we reducing accidents, injuries, and other concerns? So the rider will have a post-rider survey to talk about his ride, and we'll also be collecting data, a live data feed from the onboard data logger to determine if it fall or an accident, right? And then we've also got public surveys that are going to be going out, just getting an understanding about the perception of vehicles. But you're right, at the end of a year from now, in theory, I'll be able to have some data that says the system does reduce accidents or it does not. And that's really when the fun part starts, right? Yeah, that's really the goal. This has been a really fun project, and I'm happy to say, other than my one flight out to California, I spent no money into this, which is crazy. I'm really got good at leveraging other people's monies. But at the end of this demo, this pilot, if the data is promising, then absolutely we're going to be going to all the Birds and the Lines of the world and say, hey, what do you think?
Again, as a question, but also as a point of feedback, you had expressed that you're an engineer, that business model is not kind of where your natural inclination. Do you tend to build out, would the ideal situation be building out a team that would involve like a CEO, or how are you thinking about that?
So I'm a pretty good engineer. I can design a thing, I can make a thing. I don't know how to run a company. Don't tell anyone. I don't know what I'm doing. So it's funny, because I've given that speech a few times, and the answer is always, Dan, it's okay. No one knows what they're doing. That's good. Usually it's somebody with business sense who doesn't know how to do engineering, and they got a really crap product. So they said, at least you're on the good side. So so that's my ask for this group is yes, I'm definitely looking to build a team, but that takes money, and so there's also a need to connect with angel investors. But angel investors want to see a team, and that takes money. So I need to connect. You can see what's happening here. So, so this is a real challenge for me for sure. And when I originally, came up with this idea, I told you it was probably a patent play, and then it was clearly obvious that no, there's a hardware play here as well. We could sell hardware kits to these companies, and they could retrofit their scooters and integrate them into their own, that kind of thing. Oh, but wait, there's also a service, a consulting opportunity. I could work with the Razors of the world and teach them how to do what I've done. And then, oh, wait a minute, we've also learned we've got all this data, and boy, there's companies that would love to have that data. Companies that are looking to understand accidents, or city managers want to know where the accidents are happening, that stuff. So, oh golly, by the way, did I mention that we built up this electronic lock that Razor is absolutely loving? Why aren't I selling that? I don't know, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So along the way, I've developed, there's 7 different business models that I've got on a spreadsheet, and I keep staring at them every day going, I have no idea what to do. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do, is just get an understanding of what do you do with all these different business concepts? How do you take them forward? Which one do you take forward? Do you take multiple ones forward? I don't know. So yes, that's my biggest challenge right now, is I don't know how to take these solutions to market. Everyone's telling me, Dan, you got traction. Razor's already said, yeah, this is what the industry needs, and you've got lots of other things working for you. You got a viable product, but yeah, I don't know what to do with all that. It's a weird problem to have.
Oh, hey, did Q mention to you, there was that guy who,
I don't think he's gonna go through it.
Oh,
you mean it's paperware?
Vaporware?
Nowhere.
I love that. I've never heard that before. Yeah, he's not gonna go through it. I never heard of vaporware. That's funny. Yeah.
we did experiment with a pothole detection system. My university students did,
But
but we couldn't mature the solution. It's going to take a lot more work.
so Al, can you continue with that? The vaporware guy? What? No.
Well, okay, so,
You just distracted me, man. You just gave me alcohol in my brain. So tell me again. You want me
okay,
to-
so what I remember is he was saying that, cities have this problem of not knowing what to dispatch, resources for paving.
Oh yeah.
And then there's solutions that depend on cameras, solutions that depend on radar. And his solution, if I remember correctly, was, I think, radar or LiDAR, one of those.
Yeah, he came with his fiance or wife, whatever, and then somebody said something about having a drone detective to get the data. Was that it? Was that the guy?
I think so.
Okay, so the pothole guy.
There's a few different solutions out there.
Right. And it's
I know they're like with a lot of things like Amazon, and they're doing like a detection. All you need to do is detect when one of the wheels goes further than the other three, and you collect that data. Suspension.
You could have a little drone flying in front.
yeah, good. They're following you around. Jacob actually be a better person to connect with, just because all those entrepreneurs that go through other your Slack. They're always looking. Because if you're looking for what, a marketing person or like a CEO?
Well, the funny thing is marketing isn't really a problem. This is a B2B type play, although we do have a consumer product that can come out of this. But it's mostly B2B, and there's only 100 companies, and I already know a few of them. All you got to do is show up to one of their conventions. They don't have too many, and it's pretty easy to you show up with something like this, and it's pretty easy to get some interest. Plus, we have a website, so it's not really marketing such as a business strategy that would help to figure out how do you take it to market.
It is, I hate to be another person to say it, but it is a better position to be in, because typically it's the other way around, where you have an excitable, charismatic, business-minded person who has this idea that they're really fired up about, but just doesn't know how to build it.
Right.
So that's much more common. So as a person that has a solution, that's just, I think fairness, I do think it's going to be easier to find somebody. The question of where you find that person, I'm happy to talk to you offline and explore some options. But yeah, I think definitely the different Slack channels, there's different groups like this where you can meet people. But yeah, I think the key would be getting somebody excited enough to work temporarily on sweat equity and help you raise money.
And I did talk to one consultant that might be exactly what we do. I might have to get a BAF grant to cover that. The other option is
Or
again,
grant, yeah, or like a
right, there's small money grants. The other option is going back to the university. University of Michigan actually offers a program where basically you give a project, but it's not an engineering project, it's a business project to a group of MBA students.
Oh yeah.
And so I've connected with them, and they're like, yeah, we're totally going to do this. So we'll see. Free is a good price.
I went to business school. We did a few of those where companies would come in and pitch something, and we'd do free ideas.
You went to what? Business school?
In business school, I remember in one of my marketing classes, we did this experiential marketing thing where somebody from not Ford but a auto consulting thing came in, and we pitched ideas on auto show exhibits, stuff like that. I had a business where we went to MSU's business school, had students put together different prototypes for creative flyers, different marketing materials. I think in general, what I'm hearing from you, with the different business models, just offhand, solicited advice, focus is going to be the key. So I think the temptation when you're really early is to try to do all the things. Right. I've worked for 4 different startups, and almost always having a focus that's spread too thin is very commonly one of the things you cite as the reason the company ran out of money. So I think in general, if you do find a specific product that has traction, it sounds like the lock, for example, the way that you mentioned it, I guess would be that not only do you have some traction, but it also sounds like there's like a clearer path to profitability. I would focus on that.
And you're not the first person to say
Because
that.
when you go from there, like, what are other examples? Like, most successful companies that you look at started doing something obnoxiously niche. Amazon started selling books only.
Books.
No, you're not the first person to say
I mean,
that.
that's wild if you think about it, right? 'Cause, like, if you think like, I think most people would think like, oh, I'm gonna like launch this. Like Jeff Bezos, brilliant. He launched a marketplace that sold everything.
That's not what
It's like, no, he sold the thing that sold books, and then when he was successful enough, they slowly introduced other products, and then acquired other companies that already had traction selling pet food, and so so I don't know. That would be where my gut would be.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We started off with this collision avoidance system because it's cool, it's sexy, and along the ways we came across this electronic rock thing, which is kind of cool, but it's not as fun as this. But you're not wrong. It's just, did I plan to get into the bike lock business? Not really, but I didn't plan to get into the collision avoidance system either. So you're absolutely correct, and tricky because not all cities require that. So that is actually a pretty small niche. However, there could be a consumer variant of that could really have some real value, and that's probably what we'll pursue next.
The ideal situation is a small enough niche that you could be hyper targeted, but a larger, that kind of balance, right?
Yeah.
Solutions that solve everything are much harder to dive into.
Agreed.
So anyhow.
No, that's my pain point. You nailed it.
Cool.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So navigating through this ecosystem for you being an entrepreneur, what was the hardest part? What was the easiest part?
Yeah, the hardest part was navigating the ecosystem. There's tons of resources out there, but knowing where they are and how to get at them is very frustrating, especially early on. I'd be looking at all these different places and I'd find, there's this startup that just won this grant and this competition and this guy won this. Like, how do I find out how to get in that competition? How do I even know? Who do I even talk to know who to talk to? And it was really hard, and it just took time. And it's doing a lot of things like events like this. But certainly the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, was super helpful. Clay Phillips became my mentor there, and it's free. You call them and they'll hook you up with a mentor. And I'm basically working with the mobility group, which is great. They have a mobility group. What his role is to mentor me, but also he connects me to other resources. And he's the one who told me about other incubators. It turns out, I started with OU Inc. Turns out like Centropolis at LTU actually has even more resources, especially for manufacturing. And then Ann Arbor Spark has tons of resources, especially if we live in Ann Arbor, which I don't. But those two organizations alone have connected me to other resources. So that was the hard part, is just finding these resources for sure. And then once you're in that ecosystem, the challenging part is there's people that say they'll help you, but they really can't, and other people that you just have some casual conversation with, and all of a sudden, like you, they give you a tip that actually explodes into other things. So there's a lot of dead ends that you have to navigate. That's the hard part for sure. Yeah. And as far as the positive, it's fun. There's a fun aspect to it for sure, in sharing your story and meeting other entrepreneurs and getting great ideas from other people that have been in those scenarios. And that's definitely the fun part, which is interesting because for me, the fun part was all the engineering nerdy stuff, but I'm actually enjoying the rest of the journey as well.
Okay, carrying that through the funness, who's your favorite startup?
My favorite startup?
Anywhere, doesn't matter.
I'm seeing a lot of startups that are doing a lot of last mile stuff, right? So this is the last mile pedestrian solution. There's also last mile delivery solutions. You're seeing drones, you're seeing sidewalk robots. And cargo scooters, or cargo bikes, I should say, are really taking off. You're going to see the Amazons of the world that are starting to use cargo bikes for their last mile delivery. And Razor just introduced a cargo scooter, which is pretty cool because it's an idea that I gave them a year ago. I don't know if I can take credit for it, but again, it was a robotics project that we had showed to Razor. But cargo scooter is like half the price of the cargo bike. So kind of hoping that takes off. But there's lots of small companies that are making cargo bikes right now, and they're hoping that you're gonna trade in your old car and buy a bike for, if you've got a short commute or
If it doesn't have snow there, this is weird if you.
you just don't go out that
There's
day.
no way. Minnesota, there's a bad market.
You just don't go out that day.
You just don't go out that day.
I mean, the scooters are, if you're someone who sold your car and is getting around by Uber, the scooters are drastically cheaper for sure.
Yeah,
It's
for
like
sure.
crazy.
For sure. Yeah, the only thing that's killing them is the used car market, right? There's little electric cars you can get for $15,000, which is great. Or that's a car, an electric car. But you get a used gas car for the same price. So a lot of people don't know how to do that. But eventually the prices will come down, and you're going to see more people getting little electric cars or electric scooter or an electric bike.
Well, at least with a used gas car, it's like, oh, you pay this much to the dealer, but then you have to do all these repairs. And it
That's
winds
true.
up being.
That's true.
Are these solutions all relevant for the city bike market as well?
So, good question. So we purposely focused on scooters. One, because we had a strategic partner in Razor. Two, because they're really easy to work on. They're small. You can stick them up on your workbench. We had all the learning resources from Razor and whatnot. But yes, a lot of solutions would scale up to an electric bike or to some of these other small EVs that are coming on the market. Sure. In fact, the electric bike market is exploding right now, big time. And we expect there'll be more opportunities there than in the scooter market. But this is the low-hanging fruit, the shallow point of entry.
Super cool.
I feel like there's less prejudice towards bikes.
I agree.
For sure, because you go to New York or Toronto, which have completely banned scooters.
Yeah.
There's bikes everywhere. People
Isn't
are
that
getting
funny?
in accidents all the time. So.
Right. They're nearly as dangerous. But let's face it, this vehicle came out of the skateboard culture of California, right? And somebody decided to stick a handle on it and a motor and decided now it's a reliable transportation mode. But so you're right. It basically comes out of that, adrenaline junkie. And it's no surprise that most of the accidents are happening to young males who are bulletproof, right? Most of the ridership is, 50. It's like there's twice as many men than females will ride these things. So you're right. There's definitely a stigma, and there's a bit of a, that I'm invulnerable type. So some crazy people will go full speed, for example, and hit a pothole that they don't see. Oh, no, not you, Jake.
It was a young, stupid man once.
Well, for the two people riding, mostly I'm saying like a man and a woman. Like
Sure.
only once or twice I sing like a mom and her kid or a dad and his kids.
Sometimes, yeah.
So the newer Razor scooters are bigger and they have a basket in the front. And when I was in California, I saw Dad put his kid in the basket, and Mom's taking pictures. Of course, Mom's not stupid enough to get on the scooter. I had to take a picture of that. Really? That's not smart.
What did you do in Asia? There's 3 or 4 people on a bike. I kid you not.
Oh yeah.
And they're hanging
On
in
a motorbike?
Yes. They know the balance, man.
It's
I
crazy.
saw a family 5 deep in Thailand
See?
with a baby.
That's the mode of transportation.
2 parents, 2 kids, and a baby.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Motors.
I think of an exciting story.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, so it's 8:30. Don't want to keep you guys anymore, but thank you, Dan, for speaking today.
For
and
sure.
Really enjoyed it.
Good.
Thank you, Dan, for speaking today.
For
and
sure.
Really enjoyed it.
We have business cards up here for anybody.
I'm going to end the stream.